This is Building Tomorrow, the Society of Construction Law Australia podcast.
On the show, you'll hear real conversations about what matters most to the people behind the scenes who are shaping Australian construction.
From lawyers and contract administrators to engineers, commercial managers, consultants, and all the other experts forging the future of Australian infrastructure today. I'm Mawuna Matanda.
I'm BJ Lomsal.
And I'm Jennifer Raphael.
Today, we're chatting with James Macdonald. James is a senior associate at Ashurst. As a member of the firm's dispute resolution group, James handles all forms of dispute resolution for subcontractors, main contractors, and employers on everything from delay, variations, warranty claims, to de-scoping and even termination. Earlier this year, James also presented a paper at the SoCLA conference titled From Blueprint to Bytes, the Legal Implications of AI in Construction, examining the effects of AI in the construction industry. In this episode, James will share his insights into how AI is reshaping contract management and dispute resolution, key risks for legal practitioners and project leaders in this emerging space, and where the regulatory framework is heading. Let's jump in. Thanks for joining, James. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, BJ. Very good to be here.
Now, we'll start with a broad overview of your paper that is titled From Blueprints to Bytes, the Legal Implications of AI in Construction, which I believe you presented as part of the SoCLA conference, James.
Yes, that's right. It was fantastic to be in Brisbane earlier in the year and talking to people about AI.
Now, what are the key components of the paper for the listeners out there? What can they expect to read in your paper and in this particular podcast?
Well, I kind of covered three areas in the paper. First, I had a bit of a look at the regulatory landscape. There's a bit happening overseas in the regulation of AI, but it's all in its infancy here in Australia. And then I also kind of delved into some of the legal issues that might arise from people using AI in construction. So that's things like experts using AI, perhaps superintendents using AI, people using AI in design. I kind of delved into some of the legal issues that might arise. And then finally had a bit of a look at the use of AI in construction disputes. That topic's quite close to my heart. I'm a construction disputes lawyer, and it's been a bit of controversy in the use of AI by lawyers. So that was another aspect I looked at in the paper.
Definitely, particularly in Victoria in recent times, there have been plenty of cases where I've read even some of the cases that don't even exist. So that's concerning as a start. With that in mind, what are the main ways you see that AI is already impacting in the construction industry from your point of view?
I mean, I actually think it's perhaps not being used that widely yet in Australia in construction itself. When I was talking to people at SoCLA, I'm not sure if everyone is using AI yet in construction, but I suspect, ask me that question in 5-10 years, I think the answer will be completely different. What I am seeing, though, is perhaps people involved in construction, be it a project manager, be it a superintendent, perhaps it's a claims consultant. These people are using AI, but perhaps not necessarily thinking about its use or its implication. I mean, we all now have Copilot, right? If you've got a Microsoft computer and you've got the Microsoft system, you've got Copilot, you've got access to AI. People are using ChatGPT. So I think people are using that, but perhaps not thinking about from a confidentiality, contractual point of view, should they be telling people they're using it? That was something that I sort of dealt with in the paper, and I think is something that we should be thinking about and people should be talking about.
You also mentioned that there's no AI-specific legislation for construction. So beyond just the privacy-related and confidentiality-related matters, what do you think are some of the bigger regulatory issues or risks that you think contractors or clients should be aware of right now from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think confidentiality is a big one. There might not be any specific regulation of AI in construction in Australia at the moment, but we've got contracts, and our contracts could affect the ability to use AI. And the big one is confidentiality clauses. I mean, a lot of contracts, right, have these confidentiality clauses that people just think of boilerplate, don't pay too much attention from them, just grab them from the next deal. They all kind of come from a time where we weren't sticking things into a computer system. We weren't giving that computer system documents or asking it questions, or we weren't teaching computers based on our documents. So you've got to sort of look at some of those clauses and think, are they fit for purpose, or do they restrict what we can be doing?
Which brings me to my next question. So what needs to change? Are standard contract clauses fit for purpose in this age of AI? What do you think?
No, I don't think they are. I think, we're pretty slow at updating our standard form contracts, and we can't really afford to do that with AI. It is just moving so quickly. There was at one of the other sessions in Brisbane, someone asked for a show of hands of like, who's put an AI clause into their contract, and it was I think maybe one hand had gone up, someone who had thought about it, but it wasn't something that people had done or were thinking about. I think that, again, 5 years maybe before that, if we asked this question to a room full of people, I would hope a lot of people put their hand up and say, yeah, we've got an AI clause. I mean, I think you want to be thinking about how your counterparties are using AI, how you're using AI, and think about some of those issues that might arise and deal with them. It creates a risk, and in construction, we deal with risks in our contracts. So I think we should be dealing with AI risks in our contracts.
Now, thinking about the clauses, as you said, when you ask the audience for a raise of hands, do you think that bespoke AI clauses will then become the norm? And if so, what do you think they should be covering?
I mean, talking to some of my colleagues in other practice areas, particularly those who work in the digital economy transactions team, they're having clients talk to them about AI clauses. So what it covers is probably going to depend on the nature of the contract and the industry. But for example, just think, a construction contract, or perhaps, contract with an architect. Well, you might want to be thinking about, are they going to be using AI tools? What's the implication for that on intellectual property? And I was talking to an architect recently, and they were saying that one of the Adobe systems that they have, always been using has now kind of got its AI aspect to it. And there was a bit of perhaps like sort of sneaky change in the standard terms and conditions, all those kind of standard software terms that no one really reads, that had changed things about, well, hang on, if you're using that AI component of the software and putting things into that, they're allowed to take that information and use that information. Now, if you're an architect doing a design and you need to be able to kind of warranty your client or say to the client, hand over the intellectual property, can you do that if you've been using AI to generate that? So, that intellectual property is a big aspect. Also just think kind of security around the use of AI, depending on the AI tools, but also risk. Who bears the risk if something goes wrong, and who's going to take responsibility for that? I think they're kind of some of the big ones that we might start seeing considered in AI clauses.
As I was thinking, a lot of companies have now started even implementing their own ring-fenced AI product, particularly from Microsoft. So do you think if a company fails to use AI, could it actually become a risk for them and they breach what could be the best practice in industry in the future?
I really do think that if you're not embracing AI, there is a big risk that you will be left behind. I think there are huge productivity gains, and that productivity is a big issue in the construction industry. So I think we need to be looking at ways that we can improve productivity. I think AI will be a big part of that. Thinking more about, as the lawyers dealing with construction and dealing with construction disputes. If you're in a dispute on a high value, complex construction project might have been running for a couple of years. There's just going to be thousands and thousands of documents. And then you get into the court or arbitration process and get into the discovery phase, and you've got to review all of those documents. At the moment, they're not widely used yet, but we have these tools that can kind of effectively get AI to do that review. Something that might have taken hours and hours, like a team of lawyers, weeks and weeks, huge expense, might now be able to be done by AI. So if you're not using that to kind of save your client money in that review, perhaps in 5 years' time, people are like, hang on a second, I'm not going to engage a law firm that doesn't have those tools, or I'm not going to pay that bill. Why didn't you give that to the AI? You could have saved me $200,000. So I do think, if people aren't using it, you do risk getting left behind.
That's interesting you mentioned that. For the benefit of the listeners, I think what you're referring to is something called the TAR, Technical Assisted Review, in the discovery process. Let's say an example of what you've just mentioned. Now, TAR, as I understand, has been around for some time. In its primitive form, it was almost like a non-intelligent AI in a way, you could say, that was assisting in discovery process. But now with AI's implementation, do you feel that it could actually refine the process, or potentially it could make it worse?
Yeah, I've seen these new tools and they're pretty incredible. I mean, if it makes it better or worse, well, we'll see. People have different views on that, but I mean, the amount of money in disputes that gets spent on discovery, we have to do it better. The surprising thing is people actually don't realize as lawyers and in this aspect of disputes, we have been using a form of AI, it's like for over a decade now, but it's not the current AI. It was something where you still need your teams of lawyers reviewing documents, and it's kind of learning and watching what they're reviewing and it's giving them relevant information next. What's saying, okay, well, there's 10,000 documents left based on what you've reviewed. I don't think you need to review those 10,000. But now what you can do is you can give the AI the statement of claim, the statement of defense, the agreed kind of categories of discovery, and just get it to do the first review saying, okay, looking at that, here's a couple of 100,000 documents, identify which ones are relevant, you generate a list, tell me why you think they're relevant. It can just do that in seconds. So it's come a long way, but we're only just starting to see those now. So we don't yet have kind of a bit of practice as to if it's accepted to use them or how they should be used. But I think that will come over time.
What are some of the major limitations or risks that parties should be aware of when using e-discovery software such as this and that is AI powered in your thinking?
AI can miss things, it can get things wrong. And as any new technology, there's got to be unexpected things. So I think, a big risk. I mean, at the moment, if you want to propose using that in kind of e-discovery and your lawyers on the other side who aren't familiar with it, they might not feel comfortable with, the industry is going to have to develop a bit of an understanding of these tools. But more broadly, I think one of the risks that we see with these kind of new AI tools and these generative AI tools is that sometimes people don't really understand how they work or how they come up with the solutions that they do. It's kind of called the black box problem. They're a bit of a black box. You train them, you put some data into them, you ask some questions, it tells you things, but they're so complex, or perhaps, there's the developers don't really unlock that box and tell you how it works, that you don't really have that kind of audit trail of decision making or why it did something. Now, if you're dealing with a construction project where something's gone wrong, there's been a design issue, perhaps there's been a safety risk that's been missed, AI is being used in that. When the lawyers get involved and we start looking at, well, who's to blame, who's responsible, that kind of issue of not understanding how it works, that black box problem might mean it's a bit difficult to figure who you should point the finger at.
Well, that's one aspect of it, and I certainly agree. But in our previous conversations, we have also discussed this other idea that might not be getting the best use from AI, which is prompting. Now, AI can make mistakes. That's true, potentially. And we don't really understand how AI comes up with the results that it shows us. But the other side of the story is, can you potentially improve the results by doing better prompting? And I'd like to know, are there any tips and tricks that you apply in your day-to-day to improve the prompting and the results?
Yeah, so this was something I discovered a few weeks ago. It's a bit of a game changer for me, this idea of refine my prompt. So it's, AI, it's all about coming up with that good prompt. And now you can actually use AI to help you come up with a better prompt. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it works. I found it to be very effective. So you kind of have an idea of what you want the AI to do. I mean, you might be using Copilot. At my law firm, Ashurst, we use this system called Harvey. Kind of say, hey, I want to do this, but what do you think of this prompt? Refine this prompt, improves this prompt for me, and then it comes up with a better prompt to put in, and then you put that in, and off it goes and gives you the answer. I mean, I found that very effective, particularly for perhaps wanting to draft some correspondence or wanting to review and summarize a document. Yeah, remember this one, refine my prompt.
Noted. Let me write that down straight away. From an industry bodies and legal associations perspective, we've got the new version of the AS 4000 contract that has recently come out. Now, do you think there was an opportunity in that to include something for AI? I'm sure there are a lot of criticisms and praises for whatever's come out. If you've gotten across it, I'd love to see what you think.
Yeah, was it the best timing, was it? Because, I mean, these things that I understand why, they take time. There's a lot of stakeholders got to be involved. And the AI is just moving at such a rapid pace. I mean, I told this sort of story. I'll try and tell it really briefly. When I gave the presentation of my wife who recently returned to work after taking 18 months off parental leave. I mean, when she left, she'd heard of ChatGPT, but no one's really using it in the workplace. She comes back to work 18 months later. She logs onto a Teams call and she sees someone's note taker has joined. She thinks, who's that? And then she gets an email afterwards from the note taker and she realizes it's AI. So she's joining a meeting and it's now got AI on it. And that's just 18 months out of the workplace. So I do understand that when the process to kind of update these standard form contracts was started, people weren't thinking about AI. But perhaps there's an opportunity for a rider or a little kind of side clause. I mean, we're seeing in the arbitration community different bodies, institutions coming out with kind of some template clauses to use or procedural orders you could use in your arbitration. We're seeing the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors coming out with some professional guidelines on the use of AI. So I do think kind of industry bodies have a role to play in either kind of coming up with some guidelines for professionals to use or coming up with perhaps standard form clauses that people can use or adopt for their contracts.
It might be worth discussing a bit more about what does a good prompt look like to you in structure? Now, without giving away your secrets, I suppose, how would you prompt AI knowing that now you've actually engaged with AI and asked AI, how do you refine my prompt? Do you have a structure that works for you? For me, there is a simple one. I usually go with, this is the output that I want. These are the inputs that I'm giving you. These are the conditions you should be mindful of. Let's say, you cannot exceed this or that. And then I put in a whole lot of context dump of all my thoughts and feelings. But that's probably not so much for a legal exercise. Works for me on my personal day-to-day life and other things. What do you do? Can you share with us?
Yes, I mean, again, this is a tip that I can't take the credit for. It's something I've heard elsewhere. But think of AI as a character in your movie or your story. Get it to play a role. So what role do you want it to play? When I'm doing some work, I say, okay, well, I'm a construction disputes lawyer and I'm looking to do this. When I was drafting my paper, I'm got to admit there was a lot of AI used there, fully disclosed in the paper. I said, well, I'm drafting this type of paper so I want you to pretend you're a construction professional and drafting something that other construction professionals could understand. Tell it who it should be, and then it will kind of provide something that can be appropriate for that audience. Another example I played around with while I was drafting my paper, just kind of thinking about some of the risks or the uses of AI. I said, okay, I'm a superintendent on a project. Now, before I did that, I used the AI to come up with a bit of a scenario. I said, got it to create a latent condition claim. And then I put that claim I was using Copilot for this, so it was all fictional. There's no confidential information going in, just get that disclaimer out there. But I said, okay, well, I'm a superintendent assessing a claim under this kind of construction contract, and I want to reject the claim. Please, prepare a response for me. And it created a response. It kind of referred to the contract. It referred to the latent condition claim. But the thing is, it made some things up. It hallucinated. I told it there was asbestos being discovered, but then it made up this factual scenario about the site used to be a formal industrial site, so therefore asbestos should have been expected in the ground conditions. And that wasn't something in the latent condition claim that I'd given it. It had made this up. And it kind of shows one of those risks, right? This is where there are people out there, I mean, perhaps people listening who are project managers or superintendent assessor role, putting things into an AI. I mean, one, it just risks getting things wrong. But, you might be in a role where you're supposed to be doing an independent assessment. And is it an independent assessment if you're putting into AI to help you draft that? I mean, I can see the arguments for and against, but this is the kind of thing I think, it's great that we're having the discussion and SoCLA has podcasts like this so we can think about these issues. And as an industry, kind of go, well, what do we want to have? Do we want some guidelines or standards about that? I think the biggest one is just telling people, being transparent about how you're going to use it, because if you've told people you're going to do something before you do it, it's harder for them to criticize you afterwards.
Fair point you mentioned there. If you agree that you were going to use it and you use it properly, then you can acknowledge that there might be mistakes, as with anything, right? And particularly for people working on the job site, which you say the superintendents, the engineers, the contract managers, the project managers, they're all under pressure, and 9 out of 10 times something's gone wrong and they need to respond to something quickly and efficiently and accurately. Now, if they make a mistake while they're doing that and they respond to a notice from whether it's a contractor or a subcontractor, and whether they're an owner or principal or anyone for that matter, if they get it wrong and an official correspondence goes back incorrect and that gets found out, that's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're kind of seeing with AI. It gets things wrong and people haven't perhaps been transparent about using it, and it can really undermine. The mistake might have no relevance to the actual decision, but if you didn't tell people, well, you were using AI or explain how you were using it, they might kind of try and use that to undermine your decision. We're seeing a case in the US, we haven't got the outcome yet, where an arbitration award has been challenged on the basis of the arbitrator allegedly using AI, and kind of, I think the allegation effectively goes kind of outsourcing their decision making to the AI. So we are seeing these issues come up.
Wow. So it's not just the contractors or the lawyers. Now, even the arbitrators are using it. So, well, I guess it's free for everyone.
Well, ChatGPT is, but the other thing is be careful what you put into ChatGPT, because this is the thing a lot of people don't realize. I mean, there's AI tools and there's AI tools, right? And so ChatGPT, its default security setting is put information into it and it says, thank you very much. I'll take that. I'll keep that. And I will train myself on that. I mean, Copilot, that's a bit different. That's, in the Microsoft kind of suite, and that's sort of aimed more for business. So I think their default settings, I mean, don't quote me on this, you better always read those terms and conditions, things change, but comes more from a default of keeping things confidential. But there's different AI systems. I mentioned that at Ashurst we use Harvey, because that again is sort of ring fenced and keeps things confidential. So it's really important that people are aware of those differences, particularly if they're contemplating using some of these tools in the workplace, because you might have access to confidential information. You've got to be careful about what you put into them.
Well, you've just given me a brilliant idea. I think what you're referring to is the end user license agreement. I might get AI to read that for me next time and tell me if there's anything I should be worried about.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't miss anything there.
Yeah, look, in the last couple of weeks that we've been interacting and talking about AI in general, it's been really fun. For me, give me a better prompt or check my prompts and tell me what I can do better has been the best. So definitely agree with that.
Some final thoughts to those listening who, I mean, don't mean to scare anyone off talking about the risks of AI. You do need to embrace it, but just a bit of healthy caution is a good idea. And, as you said, hopefully there's some people listening to this podcast that aren't just lawyers, that are in different roles in the construction industry. And I think, if you are in an organization, be a champion for responsible use of AI, or ask some questions. Do we have policies? Should we be putting in place policies? And for those that are part of industry organizations, let's keep the conversation going about how AI should be used in our industry.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show, James, and I look forward to staying in touch. And in 5 years' time, I think we should get back in touch and redo this recording and go through all of these questions again and see where we are at. What do you think?
Sounds like a great idea. Thanks very much, BJ.
No worries. Thanks for coming on the show, James.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Building Tomorrow, the Society of Construction Law Australia podcast.
The Society of Construction Law Australia is a national organisation of members at all stages of their professional career with a shared interest in construction law.
For more info about the Society of Construction Law Australia, head to the website scl.org.au.
This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative.
To make sure you don't miss an episode of Building Tomorrow, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app.
And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Mawana Matanda.
I'm Vijay Lamsal.
And I'm Jennifer Raphael. And we'll see you in the next episode of Building Tomorrow.